ever wanted to pack up and just leave everything behind? I mean, get your kids, your family, or maybe you're just going solo and you want to move to another country. Maybe you've thought about it. Maybe you have not. Maybe you've done this before. Like maybe you moved from one state to the next, or maybe you have already moved to a country. But today, I want to answer some of the questions that I have been getting, like on my TikTok, and just questions from people I've gotten since I packed up and moved myself and my four children to Portugal. So I'm answering all of these questions, and it's going to actually be a two-part video because I have several questions, and I don't want to like inundate this one with, all kind of questions. So make sure that you are going to, like and subscribe to this video and channel so that you can get the notification when the next video drops. But if you don't know me, I'm Yaminah Childress. I am a mom of four. I am a multi-business owner and a business consultant. And I just packed up my family and my business and relocated to Portugal. And so I am going to answer all of those questions here, unfiltered. This is not pre-planned or anything, but I am going to just look at my phone, get some of the questions that people ask, and I'm going to answer them now. And if you have any questions from what I already said, or maybe you have just had questions for, when you're thinking about moving, then drop them in the comments so that I can answer those for you as well. All right. So, the first question I received is why Portugal and what prompted me to move? Okay. So, backstory. I spent the last several years. I don't know exactly when I made it a thing, but I spent the last several years traveling. And I'm from the U.S., so I don't know where you're watching this from, but I'm from the States. And I've spent several years traveling with my family. And when I say my family, is usually, my children, two of which are young adults. And we just traveled to different parts of the world. And it kind of started as a holiday thing. So I stopped buying my children holiday gifts several years ago. So when I say holiday, I mean like Christmas, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. I stopped buying them gifts and I started to take them on trips. And I did that because, if you're a parent, you buy your kids all of these toys and stuff, and they might play with them for a couple days, maybe some weeks if you're lucky, and then they don't play with them again. And so I said I was going to stop wasting my hard-earned money on stuff that they would not play with just to say I had all of this stuff under the tree. And I would use that to give them experiences because I feel like, a kid and just us people in general we will remember the experience versus the small little things we've received in our life. And so my youngest is 8. He has been to more countries than his age. And so that's how it originally started with the travel. But the one thing, and I said that to say, when you start to travel outside of, especially your country, I know the United States is one of those countries that's different than a lot because it has a lot of states that are fairly large and really the size of a lot of countries or even bigger. And so we are accustomed to like we travel, we go to state to state to state, and it's great. I've been to mostly all of the United States, which is great. But I would say that I think you get a lot more perspective on the world when you actually travel to places that aren't like yours, right? Because we are seeing things through our lens, through a bubble. We're seeing kind of what, our governments or the people want us to see, the media kind of feeding it to us in a way, whether we're thinking about it or not. The schools, they're feeding it to us in a certain way. And so when I started to travel a lot out of the country, I started to gain all of these different world views and world perspectives in real time, and started to think like, There actually may be something better out there than where I was living. I moved here to Portugal from Atlanta, but I am originally from Chicago, Illinois, right outside of it. And so I spent half of my life in the Midwest and half of it in Atlanta. And so, you know, seeing the world, I was just like, look, it got to be something better for my children, for myself, for my peace of mind. Talking about the food, the safety, the prices, just all of these different things. And so a few years ago, I really started to get real serious about, you know what, I think I am going to actually leave the United States. And so I started to travel with the intent of scouting different places, and not just for fun. Of course, I had some fun. We love a little good luxury vacation. I ain't gonna even lie to you. But some of the places we went to were very much intentional. Me and my oldest daughter, our birthday is 5 days apart, and so we would have these European summers, and we would go from country to country, and it really allowed us to see different places. One of the places I loved, that's not even in Europe, but it was Belize, and it was one of the first places I thought about either relocating to permanently or at least temporarily because I love the entire vibe of Belize. But that's another story. Anyway, I chose Portugal because of those things that I kind of briefly mentioned. I chose it because in Europe and, of course, in Portugal, you have access to free healthcare. And even though right now I have a private healthcare plan, it is so much cheaper than my US plan, even with the discounts from through Obamacare. I chose it for the food. They have a lot healthier food options. A lot of the ingredients that they have in Europe in general are they're banned here. The things that they sell to us and let us eat in the US, a lot of those ingredients are banned here in Europe, and so you just tend to have better food choices. Um, it was the safety. Y'all can look at me. I'm a Black mom. And I'm not only a Black mom, but again, my youngest is a boy. So I have three daughters and one son. My youngest is a son. And we all know as Black parents what we are going through in the US. You don't know what's going to happen to your young Black son when he go outside. Even playing with fake, pow pows, anything could happen. But it's just been so much unrest and so much racism and so many things. So a lot of it was safety. And then it was culture. Black people, Black Americans have amazing culture. But what the US doesn't have, that a lot of other countries has is a country culture where people are really like, they are a part of this culture. And in the US, everybody is so split. Like we have like a Black culture and, you may have, another race or ethnicity and they have their culture, but it's not really intertwined as a country as it is like in Portugal, where people it's just about the country. So those were some of the reasons I moved to Portugal. I moved to Europe in general. For those reasons, Portugal was when I did a lot of the research. They had, a lot of Black expats that moved here. So that was, something good that, my kids and I can meet people who were from where we were from, who were welcoming to foreigners. And, like I said, for all those things, like I said, this is not, this is not filtered. So you're gonna get what you're gonna get. And sometimes I'm windy. So there's that. The reason I chose to move and the reason it became Portugal pretty much for the safety, the healthcare, the culture, the food, and just wanting to be in a place where it just kind of expanded not only my perspective, but my children as they are growing up. Okay, so question number two. Did you visit before you moved or just go by faith? If so, how often? So I did move. I moved to Portugal after visiting. So I did visit last year. About a year ago. I've been in Portugal now for about 3 months. I visited before I came here because I had already done my research and I came for a scouting trip. So I had done my research. I knew it was a place that was a high possibility, but of course you got to go somewhere and see it. I say this all the time. If you're gonna go, even if it's just traveling temporarily, um, do your research, but you just have to get out there, because some people will give us their 2 cents and what they felt about it and how it was great or how it was terrible. And you may get a different experience. So, yes, I came to Portugal before I moved. I only visited once for about 2 weeks, but that was a very much intentional way of looking in different neighborhoods and really seeing what was out there. And so, when I did decide to make the leap, I had already known, like, yes, this is a place that not only I liked, my children were on the same page because I wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page when we moved. Because we thought about other places, and one of us may be like, yes, or a couple of us, and the other one's like, well, not really, right? So just making sure we were on the same page. So, yes, I did visit once for about 2 weeks before I moved to Portugal. Um, Question number three is, what gave you the confidence to shut everything down and go? So I would say I have always, I have always been very spontaneous, very free flowing, very confident in the things that I do. Um, Fear in that sense doesn't really, which is funny me saying fear because I have anxiety, but I am not fearful of my life choices, I should say. And so I am one of the people, I will try something at least once. I will move here or I will start over again. I would change careers or shut down a business. So for me personally, that wasn't one of the hardest things. It's just a natural, I'm just naturally like that. I believe that when I make decisions, I'm doing it for myself, and I feel like we should be living a life that we choose. Even if on the other side it was like, well, maybe it wasn't the best, but I usually do some form of research before I make big leaps. And I'm a really feeling person, so if it feels right, sometimes I'll go for it. I ain't gonna lie to you. But the thing is, like the confidence is always there. I'm not really afraid of changes. And so even with shutting my business down, I did already have a plan that the business wouldn't completely shut down. It would change, which for the people who don't know, me and my daughter own retail stores, clean beauty retail stores, and a beauty brand. And so we shut the physical stores down in Georgia. We put it all to e-commerce, to marketplace, and our website through Amazon and things like that, so that we can still have the beauty brand without the stores for now. But we already have plans to reopen them here in Europe. So I did already plan the business strategy. It's different, but a lot of times we're pivoting in business, we're pivoting in life. And I am so the person who's like, you should be living life. You shouldn't just be flowing through it. And making these big decisions are some of those, some of the ways that we just kind of live life. We live life by doing and trying new things and really not, being afraid or worrying about what everybody else has to say about it. So hopefully that answered your question, but I don't, long story short, I don't think I really needed the confidence. I probably already have it. And I'm really used to making informed decisions, but decisions that I feel like are right for myself. So question number 4, and there's 5 questions, and I'll do the other 5 or so in the next video. So question number 4 is, how do you plan to move to a different country? So planning to move to a different country, and especially I think if you are from the United States, because we are just naturally not taught to relocate. It has become more common for US citizens to move abroad, especially ones who aren't like rich and own homes in different countries. Just a regular American, it has not really been a thing for us to get up and decide to move. And one of the reasons I'm sure is because they always say the US is like the best country in the world, right? They sell you on the idea of being the best and the biggest, and you have access to all these things. But again, like I said, when you actually get out there, well, we have some great things and we have some not so great things, just like everybody else. Um, but with all that said, the way you plan to move to another country, especially if you weren't taught this in any way or knew anyone who did it, is to really for real start your research. And I know that's gonna sound like common, like that's the natural thing to do, but really do your research. First of all, think about what you want. And I think this is a lot of things in business. Think about your must-haves in a country, in a new place. Think about your non-negotiables, like something that you cannot live without or something you don't want to deal with. And then you make a list. And I would say make that list maybe. So for me, some of the must-haves was, a safe index, crime index, like they had to be one of the safest countries in the world. And I think Portugal right now is number 7 or something. I thought about maybe the cost of living. Think about things that are important to you and then think about things that are not. And I would write that down and then I would maybe Google places in the world, countries that are like this. And another thing for me was climate. And I didn't say that in my earlier video, but one of the reasons I also picked Portugal is because it's in the Mediterranean area of Europe. And so it has a really mild climates and it's really beautiful. If you can see right now, if you've been watching, the sun is actually coming down on my face. So it's really sunny and it's really great weather. But anywho, so you think about those things and then you start to look at those countries that fit your criteria. And then out of those countries, start to think about stuff that you don't want out of a country, right? Like I would not want to live here. And of course, it's access, right? And the one thing about the US, we have access to all types of things like stores and electronics and, da 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 da. Make sure that you have all of those things in place. And I would say maybe start with your top 5 to 10 countries and really start doing the research, some deeper research on these countries, right? Not just that surface level. Start to maybe look in Facebook groups or YouTube videos of people who live there, really do a deep dive to their crime or to, how racism looks, how is the price of living, what does every day look like out there? And once you get down to maybe 3 to 5, I will really start making those scouting trips if you haven't narrowed it down to one, because again, like I thought about Belize and we love Belize and we've been to Belize and I still plan on buying a place there at some point because I absolutely love it. But make sure that you go visit it. Don't just go by what somebody else says, because again, my experience could be very much different than yours. Prime example, if you've been on TikTok, especially if you follow travel pages for like Black people, one of the countries that you may hear all the time that is just not that for Black people is Italy. And I hear it so many times, and it's always a shock when I hear it because me and my daughter went there for one of our summer vacations, and we had the best time. The people were so nice everywhere we went, and so I don't, and I'm not taking anything away from their experience, but I say this to say make sure that you are planning trips to where you are thinking about settling so that you can get that experience for yourself. And don't make it a vacation, right? So when we went, we stayed in actually in like neighborhood areas, not like in touristy areas, not like in the party areas. We wanted to see how it would be living there. So we spent 2 weeks in Portugal in different neighborhoods, really seeing how it would be living there, walking around, going to local shops, doing things like locals would, and not making it a vacation. So I encourage you that when you are getting to those final places, possible places that you actually go there and live for at least a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. If you have more time, that's great because a lot of the places like Portugal have you can come visit for here, you can come visit up to 90 days without a visa. Some places have, we've been to places where you can visit 6 months without a visa. And so that really gives you that wiggle room to say, hey, I can come here and I can like set up for a little while and see if this is a place that I actually want to invest my time in. And so that's how you will start to plan the process. But then of course, once you get to that part, you'll start going through their, now you're going through regulations, you're going through their visa requirements, you're going through, and the visa requirements is going to have most of the things that you need to actually live there. So if you're saying, I want to be there for a long term, if I want to become a resident, it'll start telling you about like your health insurance requirements, your income requirements, your living arrangements, all of those things, which is a whole, series in itself, like the visa, that was here. But you'll just know that once you settle on those places, maybe even a couple places start looking at their visa requirements and their entry requirements specifically for the country you're from, because I do find that they may be different for different countries. And then that can even help you dwindle it down more because I've seen some visas that were easier to get than others. And maybe those real hard ones aren't worth your time or your money or your energy. And so you may, decide that you want to do something that has a easier option maybe. And Portugal was not so easy, but it was great. It was great. And then question number 5, what has been the most difficult or frustrating thing about the transition? Hmm. Um, so that was the most difficult thing about moving here, moving from the US to Portugal. Um, I think so far has been getting all of the stuff ready for the visa. And so I've traveled a lot, but I've never needed a visa because, again, I've been able to go to places where we weren't required to have a visa before entry, as long as we weren't overstaying a certain amount of time. And so, we had to do like a lot of bank statements, job contracts, we had to have housing. We had to pay for housing before we even got here. So I was paying for rent here like 2 months before I even got to Portugal. So that's one thing to consider if you have to already have a home before you get a visa, because we couldn't get a visa approved without a place to stay. So, and I know some people, you can do long-term Airbnbs and all of that, but that was kind of frustrating that I had to pay before I got here and I can just, book a hotel. It was just a lot of paperwork. The US, a lot of it wasn't just Portugal, it was waiting for the US. Like we needed like FBI reports, apostille, where you had to send this FBI report, you had to get it, and then you had to send it to the Secretary of State, and then they had to put an apostille on, and then it took weeks, and then getting the visa appointment took weeks. In Atlanta, there was no consulate that served Portugal. And so for us to get a visa, we had to fly all the way to Texas in order to do it. So I think the very initial stuff was the most frustrating. I wouldn't say necessarily difficult because most everything I had, you're talking about job, whether you're a job or business, you have information from that, tax returns or bank statements, whatever they're asking for, your birth certificates or IDs, already had a passport, of course. And so I had the things, right? I wasn't worried about getting the FBI report or fingerprint. I don't have a criminal background, so those things didn't really impact me. I think it was just the long, drawn out process and having to go from here to here to there just to get some of the things that were required. And then it was a long time waiting. Then the waiting period happened. So I think it's difficult to kind of know when it's time to take the leap because visas were taking weeks and now they're taking months, because so many people are now, moving abroad. And so it's taking a long time to get visas. And so you're kind of in a limbo state sometimes to determine when you're booking that flight. And then we had a cat with us. And so even that bringing the cat was a whole thing because you had to get a pretty much like a cat visa. But it could only be exactly 10 days before you went. So you couldn't go to the vet, and it was a very crazy time frame. Like it had to be exactly this amount of days before your flight. But you don't know exactly when to book your flight because you also don't know exactly when your visa is going to come because they don't have a deadline, it's no time frame. And so you're kind of just deciding like, is this a good time? Is this a good time? And the crazy part about it is that ours, we were just going to be like, you know what, we were going to come in January. We end up coming in March because again, it was a long waiting period, a long visa period, flying to Houston Houston and all of that. But then we just decided, you know what, we're going on March 4th. And if we have to come back, we'll do the 90 days visa free. And if we have to come back, then we'll just come back and get our visas then. Once they're approved, we'll just come back and grab them. But, everything kind of crazily worked out because we had already had the tickets booked for March 4th. And whatever date that was, I think March 4th was like a Monday, March 3rd, it was like a Monday. And our visas like came on the Saturday before. And then the cat visa came like literally the day we left. So it worked out in divine time. But I would say that is the most frustrating part, is getting here. And then I would say something that I have noticed that's a lot different than it is in the US here in Portugal. And I found that's not around Europe in general, but Portugal is a lot slower when it comes to certain things. Like the bureaucracy here is really slow. So, like if you open a bank account, we could just be like, let me open this bank account online, get our little stuff. They're gonna mail it, be there today, go to the bank, whatever, set up your utilities online or whatever. A lot of stuff they have online options, but it never really works that way. You end up always having to get into like a place. So we were like signing up for internet and we were waiting. They're asking for all kind of documents and then nothing. And so we just happened to see one of the internet places called Mio in the mall. And so we stopped in there and the guy was like, yeah, most of the stuff you got to just come in. And so we had to like set that up. And then that took a while. So we're out internet for like weeks. And so I think it's just the slowness of it all. But I think once you get those initial things set up, like accounts and utilities and stuff, then it becomes a lot smoother because since we've gotten that done, everything else kind of just has been falling into place. But I would definitely say you move to a place like Portugal or a country that is not as quick as the US, especially if you're coming from the US, then you want to consider that you are okay with slowing down. But another reason I wanted to be here because I did want to slow down and really live a minimalist lifestyle and just a really soft life. And so I'm glad I don't have all of the speed. It kind of forces me to do what I said I was going to do, and that is to slow it down a little bit. So I would say all of that, getting the visa and just the slowness of it all. Um, and so, okay, those were the 5 questions. And I know I don't have all of the answers to all of the things. So I hope I answered them as much as I could. I will say that it's only been a few months, so I am figuring this out as I go along with my 4 children. And it's been a great journey. And so, if you enjoyed what you heard or if this sparked more questions, I really invite you to like this video, leave your comments, subscribe to my channel, and turn on the notification bell so that you can get the next part 2 of this video because I already still have more questions and you see how long this one went. So I'm going to be answering those questions in the next video. So make sure that you are staying around, but I would love to answer your questions about, your business abroad, because I do consult people who are even in their countries and they just want to expand their business abroad. I like to talk about parenting. I'm a homeschool mom, if I didn't mention that. And so homeschooling abroad or whatever, or just surviving abroad, right? Just doing something that's different and becoming, an expat or whatever you want to call us. So thank you for watching. Beyond the Bio, Unfiltered with me, Yaminah. I didn't say that at the beginning. And I will see you all in part 2. Don't forget to ask me your questions. All right.